This is Duke University.
I'm glad to have a chance to welcome Sally Osberg back here for a talk today. I think it's been about 8 years or so since you were last here, and she's been doing the Lord's work, as we would say around here, ever since then, and doing it extremely well. When I think about the Skoll Foundation and all the other activities of Jeff Skoll, I'm really impressed by the degree to which he was able to focus his ideas, and the foundation which Sally runs, the Skoll Foundation, is an emblematic of a foundation that has decided what it wanted to do, focused on it, and became the field leader. Basically, for all practical purposes, though any of you who followed social entrepreneurship, you know that the Skoll Foundation is the dominant force in that field, driving it, figuring out how to document the achievements of social entrepreneurship and how to carry it forward. And that's totally a function of their decision, the intelligence with which they made the decision, and the decision actually to focus on social entrepreneurship. It's a phenomenon, as you know, many of you are involved in it, that is timely. Many of the youngest students that we have in colleges and high schools are the millennial generation, are passionate about social entrepreneurship opportunities for doing good in society, changing the world, essentially. And she's going to talk a little bit about that, but she spoke to my class this morning, and what she said, she was the first employee at the Skoll Foundation 16 years ago, and she said that she took on her task, she saw it was essentially, as she said this morning, was to be sure that Jeff Skoll's DNA was baked into everything the foundation did. That is, his passions, his values, and she'll tell you more about what they are, and that, as far as I can tell, has succeeded. If anything, it's created the field, and as I said this morning also, you know we have at the Fuqua School a Center for Social Entrepreneurship case that was established by our colleague Greg Dees, who unfortunately died about 3 years ago. Was it about 3 years ago? Yeah. And but for Sally and the support which she had worked with Greg Dees, knew Greg, and was very, very generous in supporting the center and Greg's work. So we owe a debt of gratitude to Sally for that special thing, the incidence of that benefit on Duke, but nonetheless, the benefit is much larger than that. It's the Skoll Forum on social entrepreneurship at Oxford, and various other initiatives which she'll talk about. So Sally, welcome. It's an honor to have you here again, and I'm looking forward eagerly to how you're going to take us from where we left off this morning on further on in the subject.
Well, thank you so much, Joel. Thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and of course, this is one persuasive fellow, as you all know. And I was reflecting this morning as I was talking about the early days of my working with Jeff Skoll, whom I believe to be one of the most innovative and entrepreneurial philanthropists of our time. I was reflecting that Joel was employee number 1 at Atlantic Philanthropies and working with Charles Feeney, and so he knows what it's like to work with, as we say, a living donor, someone who has very well-developed experiences and ideas about what to do with the fortune that he's made. And Jeff was really and is no different in that he came to his philanthropy with deep experience in entrepreneurship and resonated almost instantly to a special kind of leader who was bringing the discipline, the focus, the drive to solving societal problems that commercial entrepreneurs bring to solving private sector problems. So with that, the Skoll Foundation was really born. I'm going to walk you through a few quick slides, and sometime during our time together, I'll show you a a video clip too, which I think brings to life the idea of equilibrium change, what it actually looks like when a social entrepreneur is able to actually accelerate and drive very large scale change. But mostly I'm looking forward to the chance for us to engage in conversation. I'm looking forward to your questions, to your challenges, your skepticism about, social entrepreneurship. I've found that that's really the most enjoyable time that we'll have. So with that, I'll get going. The first thing to say about the Skoll Foundation really is that we're part of a portfolio of social levers, all of which hew to the same vision, and this is Jeff Skoll's vision, to live in a sustainable world of peace and prosperity. So he's created multiple organizations. The foundation was one of the first, but he also founded Participant Media back in 2004, believing that the power of a story well told and amplified by media had the incredible opportunity to educate and inform and enlighten and galvanize people to really address many of the problems they see around them. So you've probably all seen many of Participants' films. They range from An Inconvenient Truth, of course, in 2006. The sequel is coming out this year, An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power, and it picks up the story of climate change, again with Al Gore, and is really a phenomenal film unto itself. So don't miss it. It'll be released this summer. But An Inconvenient Truth really is sort of the paradigmatic participant film. Spotlight won Best Picture last year, another phenomenal film that really tells the story of what investigative journalism at its best can do. Many wonderful films about the great issues of our time, from our food supply to water to conflict in the Middle East to oil. Wonderful slate of films. 54 Academy Award nominations and 11 Oscars in its relatively short history. Capricorn Investment Group is Jeff's investing arm, and they manage our endowment as well as Jeff's assets. And unlike many foundations, we align our capital with Jeff's vision. So although our endowment isn't squeaky clean because there's some overhang from early funds and so on, we invest a third of our endowment directly in entrepreneurs who are solving societal problems, primarily in the clean energy and clean technology spaces, but looking for entrepreneurial solutions that have commercial upside as well as this impact on the environment or on society writ large. And then the Skoll Global Threats Fund, which Jeff started about 7 years ago, it's a sister organization for us, really spun out of the foundation to address the most significant threats confronting humanity and the planet, nuclear proliferation, for example, which don't really submit easily to social entrepreneurship because they're big geopolitical issues. So that's the family. That's the family of organization. Our vision and mission, as I said, a sustainable world of peace and prosperity. Then our lever is social entrepreneurship, but it's social entrepreneurs and the innovators who help them solve the world's most pressing problems. And that pressing problems lens is important. Most foundations are really organized around issues or maybe around a specific geography. Our lever, of course, social entrepreneurship, cuts across many issues, but we also filter looking for the most pressing problems confronting our world. And we're looking at the chance to invest in social entrepreneurs at what we call an inflection point, when there's evidence that their innovation works, but they're really poised for very large-scale impact. Social entrepreneurs, society's change agents. As I say, they bring the discipline, the focus, the drive, the innovation of an entrepreneur to solving society's problems. More than that, though, they're attacking a suboptimal equilibrium. That is a status quo that is disadvantaging or marginalizing or leading to the suffering of some very large segment of society. And that's really the difference between the commercial entrepreneur and the social entrepreneur, because the commercial entrepreneur targets a suboptimal equilibrium too, but the customer, of course, can avail himself or herself of that product or service because she or he has the means to purchase it. With the social entrepreneur, the population they're targeting often lacks the power or the financial resources to solve the problem afflicting them. These are our issues, and all of Jeff's organizations actually use this same wheel of issues. And you can see writ large, it's environmental sustainability, but then you get all these sub-issues: arresting deforestation, clean energy, water management, that actually biodiversity, many, many sub-issues in which our social entrepreneurs are working. But the headline, environmental sustainability, health, economic equity, peace and security, human rights, and education are the headline issues. Several years into this work, one of our board directors, a fellow named Roger Martin, who was actually a brilliant fellow, was dean at the time of the Rotman School of Business at the University of Toronto, yeah, and a prolific writer and a strategy guru, a really smart on strategy. Said to me and to the board that if we're going to talk about social entrepreneurship, we're going to source social entrepreneurs, we're going to invest in them, we better be clear what we're talking about. And so with that, he and I got to work, and we wrote this piece for a Stanford Social Innovation Review that basically distinguished among three actors in the social sector: the social entrepreneur, the social advocate, and the social service provider. And the social service provider and the social entrepreneur are similar in that they both provide direct service. Or they both work directly to solve a problem. The social advocate and the social entrepreneur are similar, and they're both striving for a large-scale change. It's indirect, though. The advocate works indirectly to influence somebody else to bring about the change. And with that, we had a taxonomy for talking about social entrepreneurship with this lens of equilibrium change, the suboptimal equilibrium, the transformation of that equilibrium or status quo to actually right what's wrong in the world. And then a few years later, we followed with Getting Beyond Better. And by the time we wrote this, our portfolio had grown to 75 plus organizations, and we finally had enough evidence that we could extrapolate some real lessons from our work and share them with the world. And that's what we did. We tried to define what we mean by an equilibrium shift. We also referenced the larger means through which large-scale transformation in society has come about, either through business innovation or through government policy innovation. And we differentiated among the key dimensions of these two domains. And ultimately, we came to see social entrepreneurs as harnessing the best of both these worlds, of business entrepreneurship and of government policy entrepreneurship, often striving for the ubiquity of impact that government policy is uniquely suited to provide, with the volitional uptake that civil society or business entrepreneurship provides. So with that, we had a new contribution to make to really understanding social entrepreneurship. We also identified 4 stages: understanding the world, envisioning a new future, building a model for change, and then scaling the solutions. So these 4 stages we see as really essential to effective social entrepreneurship. And that first one, understanding the world, really requires the social entrepreneur And often this happens after years of working in the field, requires that the social entrepreneur understand deeply this status quo that she, he, and their venture wants to shift. They have to understand the actors, the forces, the incentives, the disincentives, how it came to be the way it is, in order to ensure that the lever for change actually has a shot at disrupting that equilibrium. Because this is, okay, I want to go to the next set now. Because this is the Foundation Impact Seminar, I thought I'd also share with you just a bit about the way we assess impact at the Foundation. Over the years, as I said, we've built this portfolio. It's now 96, soon to be 100 organizations or ventures. We realized that, that we were not current on the progress and the performance of all those entrepreneurs. So we made a commitment to develop a tool through which we could ensure we had that information, and we call that the profile. And so we developed this profile for each of the social entrepreneurs in our portfolio that really asks these questions. Does it work? Can it scale? How cost effective is the model? Obviously, as something scales, you should see economies of scale kicking in, because if a measure of output always costs the same in terms of its input, there's a lot of friction then in the scaling trajectory. So we see that model for change and its economics is critical too. And then the systemic influence. And you see here an example from our portfolio, one acre fund. But we didn't just develop the profile and work with our social entrepreneurs to flesh it out so we'd get this current accurate key information populated. We developed a platform, an online platform, so the social entrepreneurs could engage with us specifically and ensure that their profiles, the information that we're holding, was current. Now, Joel mentioned that we are a leading player in the field of social entrepreneurship, and that meant that we had an extra responsibility to be what we call a credible champion. If we're going to talk about this stuff, we better know what we're talking about, and we better have evidence of what works for us to be really credible. And that's what led to building this online platform through which the social entrepreneurs and the foundations can actually engage. And we think that this is leading edge for foundations, because current practice is you award a grant, the grantee writes you a report, you put the report on the shelf, and if your program officer walks out the door, most of the knowledge about that grantee and that relationship walks out the door too. And we are routinely, our portfolio is scanned by all kinds of people interested in the field, but by investors and people and the media and others. So we want to have this trove of information that's second to none. And now we have a phenomenal basis of knowledge from which to identify patterns and trends and really, I think, serve the field in an important way. So you see some of the fields that we capture in this. Impact, we're looking at both reach and depth. And so we help the social entrepreneurs narrow the indicators, so we can track year on year on year what their progress is toward driving equilibrium change, because that's what we're really looking for. What are the indicators that are most significant? You can measure all kinds of things, and most of it's just noise. And reach is not the best indicator. But if a policy has moved, or if if there is evidence that more and more constituents are coming to your solution, then maybe you have some indication that you're making an order of magnitude difference. 3 of the areas that we dig into through this platform and through this profile, some of the ordinary stuff, your budget, your talent, your board, but then all the others, the indicators that you're on really a path that is driving change. We look at your strategic relationships too, because those are absolutely critical. And really, that's a little overview on the foundation. The work is by turns incredibly exhilarating. It's very humbling work, but it's an incredible privilege to have been a partner with Jeff Skoll over the years to build the foundation for the foundation to do its work into the future. So with that,
I go back to the class this morning. You talked about the fact that your goals really, the means that you used to fulfill the mission include basically you investing in individuals and organizations, you connect them to other individuals and organizations, and you celebrate them. Talk a little bit about the celebration function.
Yeah, this is something that's pretty unique to the Skoll Foundation, and this goes right to Jeff Skoll and who he is, because as a young man, Jeff was pretty precocious, read way beyond his years, so he was reading, Aldous Huxley and Ayn Rand and all these folks as a youngster, and getting pretty concerned that his future might not be as bright as he would hope it would be, and decided to be a writer because he felt he could write to influence people in a more positive way toward being responsible for the future. Along the way, he decided he was probably better equipped to make money as an engineer, so he got an EE at the University of Toronto. Was always entrepreneurial, so he developed a couple of companies, one of which was called Micros on the Move, and he jokes about it and says that it was aptly named. It was a computer rental company because the computers kept on moving after he rented them. He realized he didn't know a whole lot about running a business, so he got himself to Sanford Graduate School of Business and graduated there in 1995, and that's when he met Pierre Omidyar. And after thinking about it for a week or so, he decided he would go on, join Pierre in building eBay, which was called Auction Web at the time. And of course, that company had a meteoric growth trajectory, went public in 1998. And at that point, he was possessed of a fortune way beyond his wildest means, and or his wildest dreams. And he decided then that he would get back to the vision he'd had as a kid. And that was what led him to build the foundation. And this interest in media and storytelling has been baked into our strategy right from the beginning. And of course, it was a couple of years later that he founded Participant Media, but that's where the celebrate comes from. How can we use the power of media and storytelling to shine a light on these actors in the world, bring greater attention, greater visibility, and greater opportunity for people to channel resources where those solutions are really gaining traction. And that's what led us to design the Skoll Award for social entrepreneurship as a way of bringing that kind of visibility and attention to the social entrepreneurs we were investing in.
But what interested me about participant media really is not the celebration function, though it's an important part of what you do, but the fact that it's it may be the only foundation or foundation-related person who has chosen to focus using film and storytelling in a way that tries to influence the public. And we know that all of these problems, none of these problems can be solved without changing the public mind about things. That's so true, yeah. And therefore, it's all the more important to somebody who wants to change the world to create a foundation is not enough, and you need to reach out beyond the foundation. And if I remember correctly, Participant Media is a for-profit organization, isn't it?
Yes.
It is a for-profit business that is making money out of trying to change the public. No other foundation that I know of is doing it either for making business or making profit or not.
That's exactly right. So, and it is a separate organization, but all these tools, this suite of organizations all work together to accelerate the opportunity for positive change.
I want to ask you one more question. Are there any other examples, or what are the other examples of the programs that you all have supported or know of, which have had anywhere near that kind of reach in basically in changing the paradigm?
Oh, there actually are there are many of them. One is an organization called Amazon, working in Latin America, that actually realized with Marina Silva's coming into the government that it finally had an environmental minister who could help enact policies to reduce deforestation. It partnered with media and used technology to get to actually get the performance of states throughout Brazil publicized so you could see who was actually violating laws that were in place to control deforestation, created a blacklist, and all of a sudden you had a major shift where states did not want to be on the blacklist, so there were new incentives to control deforestation. You had an environmental minister who was in place in order to drive that change, and you were able actually to bring deforestation rates down considerably. There's been over the years, there are spikes as deforestation has gone up and gone down, but the trajectory is clear. Deforestation, the rate of deforestation from where it was in the 90s has gone down by almost 60%. So very significant progress, and far greater awareness that deforestation is one of the major drivers of climate change, because it's not just the slashing and the burning, but it's the loss of the carbon sequestration that forestry provides. So a major shift there. And there are others. Another one that I like to talk about is it doesn't fit neatly into any category. It's the Aadhaar number, the unique identification number in India. So 15 years ago, Indians, by and large, most of the Indian population had no formal identification. And so Indian citizens couldn't access the programs or the rights of citizens to which they should have been entitled. And a great technologist, the founder of Infosys, actually decided that he would attack this. And so he was chartered by Prime Minister Singh to do this. He developed this bioinformatics method, irises and fingerprints, that had a 99.9% accuracy, built a constituency in the government, but attacked it as if he were a private entrepreneur. Only 300 people in the government program, but 30,000 enrollment centers, and tapping volunteers, hundreds of thousands of volunteers to get Indian citizens enrolled. And in 2016, more than 1 billion Indians had secured their Aadhaar number. Now, this has led to great benefits in the private sector, where people can open bank accounts and so on, but also they're able to access government supports, send their kids to school. I mean, a whole host of benefits, and it also helps India control welfare fraud. So a whole host of just transformative benefits because of Nandan Nilekani's initiative, which he ran as if it were a private sector business within a government operation, and now it's achieved this massive scale. So
very interesting. Oh, Sally, thank you. This has been really wonderful, inspiring, and we hope that you'll come back again.
Oh, Joel, thank you.
A great pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.